Hi everyone, good afternoon or good morning for some of you. My name is Noel and I'm the Education Advisor here at Thinkful. We have about 2 more minutes or so before we can get started with the presentation, but I have put the room into presentation mode already, so that means that only my audio and video will be able to stream. You can, however, type in any questions that you have into the chat box. I'll make sure that I get to those at the end of the presentation. And for today, I actually prepared some slides that we can run through together. So in a couple of minutes, I'll share my screen and we can get started. But for now, we'll just hang out and give any last minute students a chance to join. Great, so now that it is officially 12 o'clock Eastern time, I will go ahead and share my screen and we can begin with the presentation. Perfect. Hi, so as I mentioned, and for those of you that are just joining in, my name is Noel and I'm the Education Advisor here at Thinkful. It's my job to speak to potential students about their goals and any specific projects they have in mind, any particular language they want to learn, and then figure out based on what those goals are if one of the courses that we have here at Thinkful might be a good option for them. And today I'm going to be doing that by discussing the individual course offerings that we have here at Thinkful, and then focusing my attention on the Web Development Bootcamp. I did want to point out that if you're someone who has been looking at Thinkful for the last couple of weeks, you may have noticed a couple of changes on the website. The most important of those being that the Web Development Bootcamp is what used to be called the Web Development Career Path. We wanted to make the change into the bootcamp program because it has evolved so much in the last couple of years, as I'll discuss in greater detail soon, that it now really reflects, or the name really reflects what the program is, which is itself a bootcamp that's structured to help you transition into a new career. So, as I mentioned, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type those into the chat box. I'll make sure that we can get through them at the end. Alrighty, let's get started. So I wanted to begin today by discussing first the individual course offerings that we have here at Thinkful. These are the courses that you see on screen now, and I wanted to point out some of the differences between the individual courses and the Web Development Bootcamp, as well as some of their similarities. To start, these courses are also all focused around one-on-one mentorship. Everything that we do at Thinkful is focused around that one-on-one mentor that you're working with throughout your program. And these courses all have a very project-driven curriculum, just like the bootcamp. The curriculum itself will add up to a capstone project that's entirely student-created. So if you have a particular project in mind that you'd like to build, whether that's an idea that you had a while ago or something that you'd like to build as part of your job or your professional work, you can integrate that idea into the capstone project, which is generally completed at the end of the program once you've completed the curriculum itself. Some of the differences between these courses and the bootcamp, however, are that these courses are more of an introduction to the specific skills that they cover. They're perfect for someone who's an existing front-end developer, for example, who'd like to learn to work with Python or with Node.js for backend, or someone who's been in the UI UX game for a while and wants to up their front-end skills so that they can better work with the front-end developers on their team. They're also a great course, for example, for someone who has been doing data analytics work with something like Excel or with R, and they want to learn to work with Python to do data science work. Alone, these courses aren't quite enough to guarantee that you'll be job ready. And for that reason, they don't come with career services components. But as I mentioned, they are building a very project-driven curriculum, or you are building a portfolio through the very project-driven curriculum. And you can expect the same mentorship as you would receive with any other Thinkful program, as anything that we do is focused around that one-on-one. The courses will range in price and structure, in the terms that they may take you 2 or 3 months to complete, and they may cost around $300 or $500 a month, depending on which course you're looking into. And again, I'm happy to discuss what the specifics of any of these courses are in detail, so if you'd like to type in a question about them into the chat box or send me an email, you can do that at noel@thinkful.com. As I mentioned, these courses are perfect for someone who has a project they'd like to get built or someone who's looking to learn a new skill. If you're someone who's looking for a transition into a career as a developer, whether that be because you're someone who has no experience with coding or someone who is already in the programming field but just with different technologies, the program at Thinkful that would be the better option for you would be the Web Development Bootcamp itself. This program is structured to take you from a beginner to an employed developer. It's also focused around one-on-one mentorship, but it covers a full stack curriculum that includes both the front end and the back end, and also the computer science concepts that you'll need and the developer tools that you'll need in order to succeed not only at the job interview process, but also at your future role as a developer. Because this program is so structured around getting you in that first position as a developer, it has a very comprehensive career prep and job placement component. And the program itself has been very successful. We've seen 93% of our graduates find roles as developers or engineers within 4 months of completing the program. And as I mentioned, we're working with students from really different backgrounds. Most students that come to Thinkful don't have experience with programming. They've either done something on Codecademy for a while or looked at Team Treehouse for a couple of weeks. And others do have experience, just with different technologies, and are joining the bootcamp program to learn to work with JavaScript and its different frameworks and update the tool set that they have. Regardless of what your personal experience is with programming, we strongly believe that the path to your new career as a developer begins with the one-on-one mentorship component that you have as part of a Thinkful program. And for that reason, everything that we do at Thinkful is focused around that one-on-one interaction. Research has proven many times that one-on-one is the most effective way to learn. And at Thinkful, that means a personal learning experience that's tailored exactly around who you are as an individual. Your mentor is going to be able to pick up on your learning style, and they're going to be able to identify what components of the curriculum you may have some trouble with, or what components of the curriculum you can move through more quickly because you've had experience in that field before. That also means that you're going to be paired with a mentor who's going to be answering all of the questions that you have and is entirely devoted to seeing you succeed as a student. You're learning from a senior engineer, an industry expert who can pass on their many, many years of experience onto you, the student. And to give you an overview of who those mentors are, I wanted to discuss briefly the background and experience of some of our mentors here at Thinkful. Tristy and JP, like all mentors that work for Thinkful, have an average of 10 years of experience working as engineers in the industry. They're coming from really different backgrounds, but they're true to the Thinkful mentor experience in that they're professionals who are not only great at their craft, but they're also great mentors and great teachers. The hiring process that we have here at Thinkful is extremely rigorous for the mentors. To give you an overview of how rigorous that process really is, over the last year, we've spoken to about 1,000 candidates who wish to become Thinkful mentors, but we've selected fewer than 20% of those. And Shristi and JP are two great examples of mentors who have what it takes to become a Thinkful mentor. Shristi has been a software architect at companies like Accenture and Adobe, and more recently, she's focused her attention around building a site that encourages more women to get into tech, working as developers and engineers. She's a complete JavaScript master. She's worked with virtually every framework and library written for JavaScript, and is someone who can expand on these topics and her design background as part of your program. JP, in a similar sense, is also a JavaScript engineer master, but he's focused his attention around creating much more appealing, much more aesthetically appealing graphics, using his background in graphic design as part of his inspiration for that. They both have also, in addition to the many years of experience, the right personality types and the right mentor qualities that we look for in a Thinkful program. In the hiring process, the mentor manager, as I mentioned, selects an engineer who is great at their craft and is also a great mentor. You can be an absolute great engineer, but that doesn't always necessarily translate into you being a good teacher. And so at Thinkful, we make sure that the mentors that we select, because the program is so focused around one-on-one mentorship, have both of those skills. Now, you're going to be working with one of these mentors throughout the entire program. And this is important, as I mentioned earlier, because the mentor is going to be able to pick up on your individual learning style. And the interaction that you have with your mentors is very important at Thinkful. Every single week, regardless of whether you're in one of our individual courses, the more flexible bootcamp, or the more full-time program, you're going to be getting in touch with your personal mentor over video chat with screen sharing during the one-on-one sessions that you have. There isn't necessarily a typical one-on-one session because you as a student will evolve as the program does over time. But you are going to be spending a lot of time reviewing the progress that you've made and evaluating the work that you've completed. You're going to be spending a lot of time discussing the best practices for a specific implementation, and you're going to spend a lot of time pair programming, making sure that you and your mentor are building a portfolio, crafting a portfolio together that you'll eventually use in your search for a new employment. or to present your skills to your colleagues. The feedback that you receive from your mentor is not limited to just the technical component, so not just the technical skills, but it also involves the non-technical component of being successful through a Thinkful program and in learning to program. That means making sure that you can integrate the program into your life. And of course, as some of you may already know, one of the core challenges of being an adult student is that you have several responsibilities outside of the program. For some of you, that's work. For others, it's family and friends. For most of us, it's a combination of the two. The mentor is there to make sure that you can integrate the course into your life by making sure that you're not falling behind on projects, that you're understanding components of the curriculum before you move on to the next concept, and that you're making use of all of the resources that Thinkful has available to you, for you. That means attending office hours with other mentors, reaching out to other mentors and students on Slack when you need the help, and even emailing your mentor and sending messages on Slack throughout the entire week. Really, the mentor is going to become your new best friend in development. And in addition to these non-technical components, they're really there to make sure that you pick up the technical skills that you need and the tools that you need to build a better portfolio and get hired as a developer. And at Thinkful, those technical skills are focused around JavaScript and its different frameworks. The Flexible Bootcamp and the Full-Time Bootcamp both focus on the same curriculum, which, as I mentioned, is JavaScript, and they do so for a number of different reasons. Number one is that JavaScript really is the most widely used language in web development, and it's really highly versatile. You can build full stack applications just using JavaScript and its different frameworks, and it's constantly evolving, and because it's constantly evolving, its demand in the industry continues to rise. An example of that are frameworks and libraries like React and Angular, which, as some of you may know, are products of the tech giants like Facebook and Instagram and the community that created React, and Google that created AngularJS. So we want you, the student, to be prepared for the types of roles that you're going to see as developers once you start applying for jobs, and JavaScript-focused curriculum is a great way of preparing you for those jobs. Another component of the curriculum that's also very important outside of JavaScript are the computer science concepts that you'll need to succeed at interviews and at your future role. These projects were written by one of our mentors here at Thinkful. His name is Dr. Mike Littman, and he's a professor of computer science. And he wrote these projects as part of the curriculum, these data structures and algorithm components that you're going to be studying as part of the program, and wrote additional projects for that student who's looking to go the extra mile and really hammer down on these so that they can graduate with a higher level of skill for students that are in competitive markets like San Francisco or New York City. If you're someone who's very interested in these computer science concepts, we'd be happy to pair you with Dr. Littman or another mentor for a couple of sessions to make sure that you can get the information that you need and the skills that you need in order to succeed at finding a new job. To give you an overview of what you're going to be covering in the program, and please don't worry about writing all of this down. I'll be able to send you syllabi for the curriculum for both courses after the presentation. You're going to start out by working with the front-end basics, HTML and CSS, then learning the developer tools that you're going to need, so working with Git and GitHub, becoming really efficient at working from the command line, before you move on to programming fundamentals, learning JavaScript and jQuery. Once you've covered those front-end fundamentals, you're going to focus on the back-end, working with Node.js and Express and MongoDB, before you wrap up the JavaScript component of the curriculum by working with React for even more advanced front-end development. That's when we move into the computer science concepts and begin more formally preparing for the job interview process that you'll see. And as some of you may already know, and really all of you should know, one of the most components of applying to jobs is not only building those technical skills, but having evidence of what those skills are in the form of a portfolio. Building projects that are entirely unique and student created is something that's very important as part of your Thinkful program. Why? Because when you're applying to jobs and you're coming from a program that has you recreate websites like Airbnb or Reddit or Instagram or Etsy, these projects are going to show that you know how to build and recreate a website, but they're not going to show that you can take an idea from the very beginning stages of it, meaning having thought of the solution or the service that the app that you're building is providing, wireframing it, and then building it into an MVP that you then present to your colleagues for feedback. And then you take that feedback and refactor it into a final, more second version that you include in your portfolio. That's what a hiring manager is looking for. And if you're presenting them Airbnb or Reddit, it's not something that's going to make you stand out from other candidates who might have gone to a similar program that also had you recreate Airbnb and Reddit. That's why at Thinkful, in addition to focusing on more than a dozen smaller size projects, you're going to be focusing your attention on around at least 4 capstone projects that are entirely student created and unique. One of those projects is what you see on screen now, and I actually want to step away from the presentation real briefly to show you what this application looks like in real time. So we can exit and go to the page. And this application, by the way, was built by one of our most recent graduates. His name is Paul Anderson. He's currently working out of Dallas, Texas, and he built an application that lets the user see events that are happening around the area. Some of you may have noticed Google Maps just released an update for their web application. So the maps look totally different coloring. They now highlight different components like national parks and regular parks. But anyway, the application he built is using a lot of really advanced front-end and back-end technology. And what we'll do is we'll drag it over to Lower Manhattan, which is where Thinkful HQ is located, just so that we can see some of its, what someone would use it for. Once we're centered around Soho, we can refresh the application. And these pink dots will come up on the screen. Now, these are events that are happening around the office here at Thinkful HQ. It could be a music event, it could be a basketball game, it could also be something like a poetry reading. You can click on any one of these and it'll take you to a site where you can get tickets. Sometimes that's Banners in Town, sometimes it's Ticketfly, sometimes it's the website of the actual venue where the event is being held. And this is just, again, to give you an overview of how complex one of these projects can really be. What Paul was able to do is, as I mentioned, take this to an interview, present it to a hiring manager and to a senior engineer, and talk about not only how he built that project, but why. Talk about the process that he went through in presenting that project to his fellow students, to his personal mentor, to his career path program manager, and also to the other mentors from within our network who were able to give him feedback that he was able to use and refactor the project with, so that he presented a more finalized version that is more professional and that is going to make him stand out from other candidates that are applying for the same job. And of course, there are several different projects that I can jump into. If you would like to see one of these projects or another project from our students, please let me know. I can send you examples via email. You can also see what their GitHub repositories look like, so that you get an idea of the types of skills and the high level of skill that you'd be building as part of the Web Development Bootcamp. But of course, there is so much more to just getting hired as a developer than building a portfolio. And at Thinkful, it's also very important for our students to understand that outside of the technical skills, there's also a skill in getting hired as a developer. It's a very demanding industry. It's a very competitive industry. And that's why at Thinkful, we're pairing you with a career coach from the very beginning of your program, who at first is there to help you explore the interests that you have in the industry. So think about what types of jobs you'd like to work, what type of company you'd like to work for, and where in the country you would like to work. Once you do start building those technical skills in the program, we're going to be putting those to practice by having you have mock interview sessions with different mentors from within our network. It's important that you have these interview sessions with different mentors, because we don't want you to get used to having the same interview with the same mentor. We want you to get nervous. We want you to practice not being nervous so that your technical skills can shine through. And initially, those interviews are going to cover things like front-end development. They're going to get progressively more difficult. Towards the end, you'll be focusing on the computer science concepts that I mentioned, so that by the time that you're actively submitting applications and looking for jobs, at the end of the presentation, you're ready. You're not getting nervous. You're leaving a good first impression. And that after you perform the technical interview, that leads into the next step, which is getting hired as a developer. Once you're closer to the graduation point, you and your career coach are going to be getting together every single week to evaluate the materials that you have. Your portfolio, your LinkedIn profile, your resume, your GitHub account. They're going to be giving you a lot of guidance in crafting the perfect email, or how to schedule a call with a hiring manager or the potential employer, so that you can take that call, perform really well during that first screening call, and then that'll lead you to the second interview or the technical interview that you'll also be able to succeed at. While you are submitting applications on your own end, our career coaches are also doing that for you. The career coach that you're working with is going to be reaching out to different companies based on your career goals and also what your skill set is, and setting up interviews and introductions on your behalf. We're going to be reaching out to companies specifically in the area where you'd like to work. And again, we're going to be asking lots of questions about what type of company you'd like to work for and what type of role you see yourself doing. All of this is done on a case-by-case basis, because we want you as an individual student to have the most level of support that you'll receive out of any bootcamp program that you look into. This is something that's very unique to Thinkful, and something that I feel like sometimes it's not emphasized enough in other programs, how important it is that you have an individual career coach working by your side, not a recruiter at another company who's going to be taking a percentage of your salary, and that you're not being placed in a room with other graduates of the same program and being made fight to the death for the attention of several companies that are in the same room. Instead, we make sure that each student is able to submit applications individually, so that they're not competing with their own fellow graduates, and that they're not being left out if one of those interviews doesn't go well. We're doing this from the very beginning of the program, as I mentioned, first by having you grow your network of professional employers or potential employers, then having you put those skills to practice, and towards the end, guiding you in the job search process and submitting applications on your behalf, because we want to stand behind you as a student. Currently, we're making around 3 to 5 introductions per graduate, and we do this again on a case-by-case basis. The person that you saw on screen there, Liz Parsekian, is our employer network manager, and she's constantly growing our network of potential employers by getting in touch with potential employers in cities where our graduates are beginning to look for jobs. An example that I can give you is about 2 or 3 weeks ago, she was on the phone with one of the hiring managers at Amazon in Seattle. The hiring manager was able to reach out to Liz after they got in touch, and they discussed any potential graduates that we had in the Seattle area. The hiring manager said, hey, if you have any graduates in Seattle, we'd love to interview them. Please send them our way. That is a connection that we now have and that we're going to be using as graduates from the bootcamp program begin to search for jobs in the Pacific Northwest. Another example is one of our most recent graduates here in New York started working for a company. The company reached out to Thinkful and said, hey, we're very impressed with Rachel's performance, and we would like to hire more graduates in the coming months because we think we're growing really quickly and we might be needing to hire graduates. So if you do have any graduates in New York, please send them our way. We'd be happy to interview them. That's just to give you an example of how the employer network that we have here at Thinkful works. Again, it's not by hiring a recruiter that's going to take a percentage of your salary, or by having you attend a career fair that we've organized where there's only really 3 or 4 positions available, but there's 6 or 7 of you there present. And we do this because the success of our graduates is very important to Thinkful. Everything that the program is supposed to do is teach you the technical skills and get you hired. And we want to highlight the success of our graduates by being transparent about the processes and the outcomes of those graduates. For that reason, in January of 2016, Thinkful became the first online programming school to publish a report with statistics on the outcomes of the students that have gone through the program. On this report, you'll see things like the job placement rate, which, as I mentioned, at 93%. You'll also see what the titles of our graduates are. They range from software engineer to web developer to front-end developer, all depending on what that student was doing in the program and where in the country they are working. You'll also see information about who these students were. How old were they when they enrolled in the program? What parts of the country were they from? And did they have experience? Were they working while they were in the program or not? You can check out the report, see all the number and all the data that we've published, and you can trust that that data is legitimate. In April of this year, we reached out to an accounting firm in Massachusetts, and we asked them to verify that this data is legitimate and real, and that the methods that we've applied are as advertised. And we did this again because we want you, the student, to know that the tools that you have at your disposal through this report and through everything else that Thinkful publishes is legitimate, that it's real. Everyone here at Thinkful, from our 2 co-founders, Daryl Silver and Dan Friedman, to everyone at Thinkful HQ behind me and all the mentors that you'll be working with throughout the program, very strongly believe that education requires trust. And in an industry where that trust isn't always something that you can see from a company at its face, it's very important for you to have the tools available so that you can ask the right type of questions and build that trust with that company that is publishing their job placement rate, that is publishing a report with their salary increase or where their graduates are in the country. And if a bootcamp isn't, that you question why not. And that if they're not able to answer that on a phone call, or they're not able to give you a solid number, that you look into what the reasons behind that may be and consider your options to make sure that you're making an informed decision on the bootcamp that you're committing not only thousands of dollars to, but hundreds and hundreds of hours of your life and your time. If you have any questions about what the numbers on that report are, please feel free to type those into the chat box. I'll definitely be sure to link you all to that report in the chat box once I'm with the presentation. But as I mentioned, we are working with graduates from all around the country. And as I mentioned, a lot of these graduates, in fact, most of them aren't coming from technical backgrounds. And the 4 graduates that you see on screen now are perfect examples of that. Matt Morris is another graduate of ours currently working in Dallas, Texas. He is a developer at Real Paging, who before coming to Thinkful had always wanted to be a developer. He'd gone through things like Codecademy, had tried some other self-learning resources out there, but wasn't able to make the full transition. He figured out that he needed something very immersive and more structured. And so he came through what was then known as the Career Path program, now the Web Development Bootcamp, and was able to transition onto a position as a developer. Before that, he was working in a completely different industry as an English teacher, actually focused on English as a second language education. But yeah, didn't have a technical background, went through the program, is now a developer working in Dallas. Emily is another great example of one of those students that didn't have a technical background. As part of her undergrad, she studied political science, came through the bootcamp program at Thinkful, and she's currently working as a software engineer over at IBM here in New York. Rachel's the graduate of ours that I mentioned that's here in New York, working at Hedgeable as a developer. She also didn't have a technical background, and Christian was working in retail over in Los Angeles before he joined the program. Now he's working as a developer. Tons of examples that I can send over your way. And again, in addition to publishing the success of our graduates in their individual stories, we want to publish that data as well so that you can see, oh, who are the 50 graduates? Those are the 50 graduates. What are their titles? Those are their titles. And what types of companies are they working for? Great. This is all data that I think is very important for students to have at their disposal when they're considering a program. So if you'd like to see more student examples, or as I mentioned, ask me any questions about the report, please type those into the chat box. As part of any program that you should be looking into, you should also be considering a program that's willing to stand behind its processes with a guarantee. A program that is so confident in what their program is supposed to be structured to do that they're willing to refund 100% of your tuition in the event that it fails. And at Thinkful, we do stand behind our program with a money-back guarantee. If you are not able to find a job as a developer or engineer within 6 months of completing the program, we're going to be refunding 100% of your tuition. But unlike a lot of the programs that you may be looking into that also offer a guarantee, we're not asking you to stand by a long list of criteria and different guidelines in order to make sure that that guarantee even applies. At Thinkful, what's most important to us is that you are committed to the learning, meaning that while you're in the program, you're not missing any of your one-on-one sessions, that you're not falling behind on projects or giving up on the curriculum, that you're asking for help when you need it, and that you're getting in touch with your mentor every single week and discussing who you are, your portfolio, and the next steps in continuing to succeed. Once you do graduate from the program, we're asking that you have that same connection with your career coach, that you and your career coach get together every week and evaluate your progress and talk about why interview 1 may have not gone well, so that interview 2 or 3 really do. So long as you're actively submitting applications, we're never going to ask you, by the way, to submit 5 applications per day or 10 applications per week. That's not really what Thinkful is in the mood for. We're not asking you to submit applications to companies that you're not a good match for. We're just asking that you as a student are open to the suggestions that your career coach has and that you attend interviews. Even if you're not eventually going to work for that company, you're building connections and you're showcasing your skill. Those are all things that you'll be discussing with your career coach throughout the entire process. Other than that, there are a couple of criteria that we ask you to take into consideration for the guarantee. One is that you're at least 21 years old, and another is that you're legally able to work in the United States. The third is that you're able to speak and write English to a proficient level. And the fourth is very important, not just for Thinkful, but also for you, the student. And I'll go into detail about why that is. We're asking that you're willing to commute or relocate to a city or an area that has a healthy job market for web development jobs. Now, this is something very important that I want to make sure I explain in detail. Throughout the entire country, web development is very in demand, but the technologies that are used in different parts of the country vary. If you're someone who's living in Western North Carolina, or someone who's living in Little Rock, Arkansas, or places like Reno, Nevada, web development does exist, but not with JavaScript and its different frameworks, or not with something like Python. Those areas around the country tend to focus on things like .NET or PHP or Java, which are older technologies that, although still in use, are not what is part of the Thinkful curriculum. And so we want to make sure that if you're considering the bootcamp program, the bootcamp curriculum is going to benefit who you are as a student and where you're going to be looking for jobs in the future. So if you're curious about the area around the country where you're living or where you're planning to look for jobs and whether it has a healthy job market for jobs and technologies that we teach, please type it into the chat box. I'll be sure to jump onto dice.com with you. We can filter through the job postings and figure out whether that city guarantees or applies for the guarantee. You'd be surprised how many cities throughout the United States qualify for that. Places like St. Paul, Minnesota, Houston, Texas, Miami, and Fort Lauderdale. Other places, of course, like San Francisco, California, and New York, which are the givens, but also parts of the country like Detroit. These are all parts of the country where we have current students working and graduates that we'll be working with in the future to ensure them and guarantee them jobs as developers. Now, another important component of the program at Thinkful is that it's very unique to who you are as a student in terms of what the program is structured like. As you saw online or through one of the emails that I might have sent you in the past couple of weeks, the program can be approached through 2 different paces. On the left hand, you have the more flexible and self-paced program. And on the right, you have the more full-time and immersive program. I should make clear that both the flexible and full-time program are offering you the same curriculum and cover the same concepts. You can also expect the high level of mentorship from both the flexible and the full-time program, as well as the same career prep opportunities and the same career guarantee. Key difference about these two programs really is that they're structured for different students. On the flexible side, you have a program that's perfect for that student who can't quit their job, who has school or other responsibilities that keep them busy throughout the day, but they are able to commit 20 hours a week and work with their mentor 3 times a week to finish the program in 6 months. They're a student who takes direction really well and knows that they'll be able to ask for help when they need it. They know that they'll be able to attend many of the office hours that we have, that they'll make use of Slack in the student community, which, by the way, they're joining a community of hundreds of students and different mentors that is, again, pretty unique to Thinkful. Other programs will offer you Slack and they'll offer you forums, but something that Thinkful does above and beyond that is offering you live office hours that you can attend with different mentors from within our network. For the JavaScript concepts, there are several of these throughout the entire day, 7 days a week. So even if you're working a full-time job and are putting in most of the time into your program on Saturday afternoon or Sunday evening, you can rest assured that there's an office hours that's scheduled during one of those times so that you can attend and get in touch with a mentor in real time if you happen not to have a one-on-one session with your personal mentor that day. On the full-time program, you have a much more immersive and daily schedule that you're following. It's the most comparable really to an in-person bootcamp and is perfect for that student who is looking for a very structured experience. Someone who knows that they benefit from the type of learning where they're meeting every day with their personal mentor and their fellow students, where they're following lectures and pair programming sessions, where mentors are constantly actively looking at your code to make sure that you're using the best practices. Really, you're putting in about 50 hours per week and you're graduating from the program in 4 months. Because the program is following a daily lesson plan, it has a specific start date. The next program would start in August, and I encourage all of you to consider beginning that this coming week if you are considering the program. The application process will take about 2 weeks. So August 8th is the absolute last day that you're able to enroll in that program, just to give you a time frame. Whereas the flexible program, because you're working one-on-one with your personal mentor and aren't dependent on other students to make progress, you can begin at any time. Happy to talk about the differences between the two programs in greater detail and even share my screen to give you an overview of what the office hours are like, what the curriculum looks like after the presentation, but this is just to give everyone an overview now. And I wanted to wrap up the presentation real quickly by discussing the different scholarships and financing options that we have for the program. We've partnered with 3 really incredible organizations, Girl Develop It, Operation Code, and Mother Coders, to provide all self-identifying women and U.S. military members scholarships for the program. There's no application needed for these. You're eligible to receive them. You will receive them upon enrollment. And you can also combine them with the different financing options and payment plans that we have for the program. These include the opportunity of financing your program by applying for a loan, and that's through the partner that we have called Skills Fund. And that opportunity would be, or that option would be for someone who is looking to make the lowest monthly payments while they're in the program and afterwards. The deferred payment plan, which is entirely through Thinkful, is for someone who has a budget of around $500 or $1,000 per month and is able to continue making those payments once they've completed the program. To give you an overview of the pricing for the courses, the flexible program is at $1,500 per month, whereas the full-time as a set 4-month course is at $14,000. And again, I'm happy to share the payment calculator that we have where you can see all the different financing options and how they combine with the scholarships and with how long it might take you to finish the course after the presentation. But I wanted to give everyone an overview of what they can expect in terms of scholarships and financing. And now I know that I've been talking for what seems like forever, but I wanted to thank everyone once more for joining me for the info session today. The next steps to getting in touch with me if you need to step out of the room are to send me an email at noel@thinkful.com or to schedule a call with me through thinkful.com. You'll also be getting an email tomorrow sometime thanking you for coming once more, and you can schedule a call with me through that email or just hit reply and we can continue the conversation then. But as I mentioned, if you do have questions that you'd like to ask, please type them into the chat box now and I will make sure that we get through them. So we have one question already. Is there data on what the average starting salary is? Yes, so we do track that data pretty closely. We do ask all of our graduates to report what their salary is if they feel comfortable with that. Most of them do, in fact, almost all of them do. But one of the reasons that we don't publish that data on the website is that we are working with students from really different parts of the country. So I spoke to a student earlier and they had a very similar question about the salary and why we don't report that. And I explained that because we're working with students that are living in places like Houston, Texas, and places like San Francisco or New York, the starting salaries are very different. They're shaped not only by the type of company that you work for and what your role and title is, but really most importantly by what the cost of living is in that area. And so if we were publishing data on the starting salaries for one of our graduates in New York or San Francisco, that number would be a lot higher than what someone who's living in a place like Dallas, Texas, or Boulder, Colorado could expect. So a better and more accurate way for us to report on the salary increase or the salary of our graduates is by reporting the salary percent increase. That takes into account not only that a student may be working in a place like New York or in a place like Dallas, Texas, where the starting salaries are different, but also that there are some students who are working currently in more senior level positions where they're making well over 6 figures at their jobs, but they're so interested by web development and looking to make that transition that they take a pay cut in working an entry-level position. And it also takes into account that there are students who are making minimum wage while they're enrolled in the program, and that their really, really high salary percent increase is going to be canceled out by the person who took that pay cut. So that really we're getting a number that is a lot more accurate and more honest in terms of what you can expect. Of course, we do track that data, as I mentioned. So if you're on a phone call with me and you ask me, what's the starting salary of graduates in New York City? I can tell you what that starting salary is, currently around $75,000. If you're asking me, what can I expect in San Francisco? I can tell you what that starting salary is. If you ask me what you can expect in Houston, Texas, or in Dallas, what our graduates in Dallas are making, I can tell you what those numbers are. But overall, because we're working with students from really different parts of the country, we publish the salary increase as opposed to the individual numbers. Once we have so many graduates that we're able to more accurately represent the data points for different cities, we'll publish that data. But for now, we want to have a conversation with you and make sure that the number that you see online is honest and legitimate. Can I also get the job offer after graduating from this course if I don't have any college degree? Yeah, definitely. I would say that a good 20% of students that have graduated from the program or that are currently enrolled don't have a college degree either. So you don't need to have a bachelor's degree in any field, certainly not computer science, to enroll in the program and expect the same career support and the same job placement guarantee once you graduate. Does the flexible program have to be completed in 6 months, or can it go over? It can go over in terms of that you have the option of doing so, but if you want to qualify for the guarantee, we do ask that you finish the program in 6 months, meaning that you're able to devote 20 to 25 hours per week over the next 6 months to finish the program. That's really a very accurate time estimate. I can only think of a couple of different students that have finished the program in longer than 6 months, and they had a very specific circumstance or a very specific event happen where they needed to withdraw from the course for a period of time or take longer through a component of the curriculum. Really, the 6 months is a very accurate estimate. You can also finish in less. So if you're someone who's able to devote 40 to 50 hours per week, as opposed to the 20 to 25, you can finish the program in, say, 4 or 5 months. Can I also get the job after graduating from this course if I don't have any college degree? Yes, correct, as we just mentioned. I am located in Amsterdam. Do you have a good presence in Europe as far as career resources go? Yeah, believe it or not, we actually have graduates in the UK, and we have students that are currently enrolled in the program that are going to be looking for jobs in London. No students that are currently in Amsterdam, but one of the ways that the career services component of the program works is by having the person that I showcased on the presentation, my colleague Liz, proactively search for opportunities for our graduates. If we have a graduate that's going to be graduating in Amsterdam, or it could be Berlin, Germany, or in a place like Sydney, Australia, or Vancouver, where we've not yet had graduate work, we're going to be reaching out to companies in advance to make sure that by the time that student does, we have a stable connection to companies in that area and are able to introduce that student to an employer based on what that student's individual goals were or what their skill set were. So you can expect that in a place like Amsterdam, we will be making introductions to company on your behalf, and we will be setting up interviews on your behalf. The same standard that we would have for any student working in the United States, we'll be putting into your program as you finish as well. Is the career coaching included in the $1,500 per month for flexible, or is there a separate charge? No, that is totally included. Once you graduate from the program, meaning once your portfolio has been approved by your mentor, once you've discussed things with your program manager, you stop making payments to Thinkful. The career services that are offered for the next 6 months or up until you find your job, which is generally around the 3-month mark, that's completely already been included in part of the fee. Are the one-on-one meetings timed, or do they go as long as needed? They are timed. There will be, for the flexible program, 1 hour long, each of them, so 3 times per week for 1 hour. For the full-time program, they're at the end of every day, currently about 30 to 45 minutes each, but there is flexibility in that. A lot of the mentors are willing to continue working with the student if they're working on a very important project, to schedule another session, and we're happy to have that as part of your program, by the way. So if there is this particular week or a particular concept that you're struggling with and you need to get in touch with your mentor more often, or a personal mentor, we can either schedule that with your personal mentor or have another mentor sub in. It's not a concern. We have enough mentors to be able to do that, but overall, they are timed. It is 1 hour per session, 3 times a week for the flexible program, and then 5 times a week, each session about 30 to 45 minutes every day at the end of the day with the full-time program. Are you just going to help us finding our first job, or are you going to help us finding a job lifetime? The career services component is focused around finding your entry-level developer job, but that's not to say that you lose all contact with Thinkful once you have that. You retain access to their curriculum. You also retain access to Slack and the different mentors that we work with. You can always post questions on Slack if you're at your new job, can't quite figure something out. And another component of that is that the program managers that are working with you and your personal mentor establish a very close connection, because you're working with these individuals over the course of 4 to 6 months, essentially every day of the program. And afterwards, we've had our program managers continue to help students finding jobs. One of the graduates that we worked with was at a startup for a number of months. Towards the 6th month or so, I want to say the 3rd month or so of him working there, the startup went under, and our program managers helped him find another opportunity. But we did that again, not because we were completely done with that graduate, said, here's your first job, there you go, you're all done. But because we really care about the success of our graduates, even past that first point or that first job. We also have graduates that have come back to Thinkful to receive additional training that their employers are paying for. Another graduate of ours started working for a company that introduced working with Ruby on Rails and JavaScript, another component or another framework of JavaScript, into what their workflows are. And so the student came back to Thinkful, their employer is paying for it now, and they're working with one of our mentors to learn additional skills that they're going to be using as part of their job. Another question, 50 graduates so far, is that in total, or is the number reflect the fact that the program name changed? No, that's in total. So what used to be known as the Web Development Career Path and is now known as the Web Development Bootcamp started in 2015. In April of 2015, the flexible option, or what was just then known as the Career Path program, began. Majority of the graduates that have enrolled in the program in total have done so since 2016 began. So we're starting to see that number rise exponentially each month. Each month there are about 4 or 5 other graduates that we're adding. So if you look at that same report in the middle of August, this coming month, the number will be higher than it is currently. And that's again to reflect the fact that most students have begun the program in 2016. The full-time program graduates are graduating in the next week. So you'll see that number go up by a higher margin than it has in the past, because now there are 2 different programs going on at the same time. And every month there will be about 6 or 7 graduates or 8 graduates from the full-time program and about 6 or 7 graduates from the more flexible program. So really by the end of the year, we're looking at well over 100 graduates, well over 150 possibly. So what percentage of people who start the program completed? Great question. And this is a great opportunity for me to jump into the career path job support, or the job support that I discussed. If you look at your screen now, you are able to see what the report looks like. And I'll actually just go ahead and type that into the chat box so that we all have access to it. This is what the Web Development Bootcamp jobs report is. And on this report, as I mentioned, you're able to see data on the graduation rate, the job placement rate, what the salary increases amongst your graduates, and what titles they have, how long it took them to graduate from the course. Also, some statistics on what they were doing while they were in the program, what their demographics are, and where the students are in the country. Towards the top, you see information, as I mentioned, on the job placement rate and the graduation rate. Currently, the graduation rate is at 40%, and I think it's very important for me to explain the number behind that, or the reason behind that. The majority of the time that a student withdraws they've cited financial limitations as the main reason for them leaving the program. Whenever a student withdraws, whether that's from the Web Development Bootcamp or from one of the individual courses, we do ask them to fill out a short survey where they explain what the reasons for leaving are. They give us a lot of feedback on what their mentor experience, and the overwhelming majority of time, their mentor experience was great. They learned a lot in the program, but they weren't able to continue paying for the course. And so they withdrew, and a way for us to address that in the most recent months has been to introduce different financing options and payment plans, and also scholarships, so that both students that are currently enrolled in the program and new students that are beginning the program have a plan in place, that they've either financed the program through the loan from Skills Fund or they're enrolled in the deferred payment plan, to ensure that they can continue making payments while they're in the course and don't have to worry about withdrawing because of financial limitations. We're already starting to see that number of graduated students continue to rise, and we're confident that in the coming months, it'll rise to a much more desirable or much more optimal percentage. But for now, it is 40%. It's very important that I share that. How much do the scholarships pay? Another great question that we have, and another great opportunity for me to jump into the payment calculator that we have for the program. I will be linking you to that as well. This payment calculator that you see on the website is going to explain the different financing options and the different scholarships that we have for the program. You're able to select whether you're a full-time or a flexible student, whether you are eligible for the scholarship, and how many months it may take you to complete the flexible program. Because as I mentioned, you are able to put in more hours per week. So if you are someone who is eligible for the scholarship and you're completing the program in the 6 months, you'll see that the price reflects $1,200 total, which is over 6 months, meaning that every month you're receiving a scholarship for $200 off the price of the program if you're in the flexible program. If you're a full-time student and you are eligible for the scholarship, it's the same amount, but it's actually just over the entire program. So you're able to subtract $1,200 from whichever financing option that you're considering. To give you an overview of what those financing options are, you have the opportunity of applying for a loan through Skills Fund. And this is generally what I suggest that students do if they are interested in making the lowest monthly payments while they're in the program. If you are approved for the loan by Skills Fund, across all options for the flexible program, you'll make an initial monthly payment for the 1 month's price of the program. That could be $1,500 or $1,300, depending on which financing option or which whether you're eligible for the scholarship or not. And then you begin making payments to Skills Fund beginning the 3rd month of your program. If you are a full-time student and you are approved for the loan, you also have to make a deposit 1 week before you start the course, but then we'll be making payments to Skills Fund in a different format. You're making them while you're in the program and then afterwards as well. The size of that monthly payment changes depending on whether you're eligible for the scholarship or not. So definitely be sure to follow up with me on a phone call to discuss the specifics of the Skills Fund loan or the different financing options. The deferred payment plan, as I mentioned, is entirely through Thinkful, so there's no application that you need to submit. Let's see other questions that may be asked. I think those are the questions that we've had so far. One question that I did want to ask everyone, it's something that I definitely ask students when I speak to them on the phone one-on-one, is where in the country are you? As I mentioned, Thinkful HQ is located in Lower Manhattan. So we are in Soho, for those of you that know New York City. We are an office of about 20 individuals total. I can give you a little bit of an overview of what that office looks like. There are people, you just can't see them very well because of the glare on the screen, but most of the team is over there. One of our co-founders right there in the middle, Daryl Silver, waving now. But yeah, that is Thinkful HQ, which is actually going to change in the coming months. We are relocating to another office somewhere in Manhattan. Haven't yet decided where, but you're in Detroit. That's great. Detroit has tons of opportunities for web development. One of our program managers and I talked about this not very long ago, actually. He has a couple of connections, of professional connections in Detroit. And you wouldn't expect Detroit to have such a booming tech industry, of course, because it suffered very greatly from the automobile industry collapsing. but it does. JavaScript is something that's very in demand there because there are a lot of young companies that are beginning to take up the jobs that weren't there before. So if you're in Detroit, you're in a very great spot to be in terms of career opportunities. And if you're focusing on working with JavaScript and its different frameworks, you're at an even greater spot. Now, another question I had for you all was whether you were interested more so in the full-time program or more so in the more flexible program. As I mentioned, there are different start dates for that. So if you are someone who's interested in the flexible program, you can begin that at any time. We could always schedule a call after this or get in touch via email to discuss what enrolling for that program will look like. And if you are in the full-time program but are just being shy, there is a specific start date. And the official cohort begins August 22nd, but it's required that you enroll by August 8th. So August 8th is the last possible day for you to begin the full-time program preparation coursework. It's a 2-week prep course that we ask you to complete. That 2-week prep course teaches you some of the fundamentals of front-end development so that you're up to speed where all the other students will be in terms of experience when you begin the program. And it also gives you an opportunity to figure out what the Thinkful student dashboard is like, get an introduction to how Thinkful online education works, and really make sure that the full-time immersive program is the right program for you before you begin. Most students that do enroll in that program definitely transition onto the full-time program. But yeah, if you're interested in signing up for that course, as I mentioned, the last possible day to do so would be August 8th. But I really heavily encourage all of you to sign up by August 1st. That gives you more than enough time to go through the prep course and then prepare on your own end. In fact, most students I speak to, I've encouraged to do that as well. But those are just some dates to give you a time frame. I'll type those into the chat box now. Now, so I do want to post my email address and also the link to schedule a call with me in case you'd like to get in touch via phone later today or sometime this week. The email address that you see on there is where you can get in touch with me one-on-one, and the link that I just posted on there will take you to a calendar where you can select to speak with me sometime later this week. We can always set up some time to chat one-on-one. That being said, I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you have. Otherwise, if you do need to get back to your busy day, I wanted to thank everyone once more for coming to the Thinkful info session. If you have any feedback about the session, by the way, whether you wanted to hear about another component of the program covered in greater detail, or whether there was something that wasn't quite so clear to you, please feel free to type that into the chat box. I take feedback from students very, very seriously, and I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job in informing you all of not only the value of the Thinkful program, but making sure that I address all the questions that you have and that you're walking away from the info session with a ton of information to make an informed decision. But yeah, other than that, I wish you all then a wonderful rest of the day. If you are on the East Coast, that you stay dry, no humidity, and cool, and that if you're on the West Coast, somewhere in California, where my hometown is, that you're not breathing any of the air from the fire. But otherwise, have a great rest of the day, everyone. Take care.